If you watched Coraline as a kid, there's a good chance you remember it as a mix of magic and pure nightmare fuel. But if you've rewatched it as an adult, then you've probably realized this story is way more than just a creepy adventure. So, what is it that makes this movie stick with us even years later? It's not just because it's one of the darkest animated films ever made, it's not just the stunning stop-motion animation, and it's not just because of the villain who still haunts our dreams. Coraline is a classic because it breaks all the genre rules, treats its audience with respect, and delivers psychological horror without needing cheap jump scares to leave a lasting impression. So, let's dive into why this movie stays so fresh in our minds, and why it'll probably stay that way for years to come. You know that old trick of throwing in jokes to lighten the mood, or making villains super cartoony so they're less scary, or making sure everything ends perfectly tied up in a happy bow? Yeah, Coraline throws all of that out the window. From the very first minutes, the film sets an unsettling tone. That opening scene, where a pair of creepy metal hands takes apart a doll and reassembles it with button eyes, already lets you know this is not going to be a feel-good ride. But what really makes Coraline scary isn't some monster jumping out of the shadows. The fear comes from the atmosphere, from that uneasy feeling that something is deeply wrong, even when everything looks beautiful and perfect on the surface. And that brings up a question: is this movie even scarier because it's meant for kids? Absolutely, because it respects its audience's intelligence. It doesn't spoon-feed everything, it doesn't explain every little detail, and it definitely doesn't treat kids like they're too naive to feel real fear. On the contrary, it uses metaphors, subtle hints, and symbolism to tell a story that can be understood in lots of different ways. The result? Even adults keep finding new layers to this movie every time they watch it. The one truly responsible for the horror in Coraline is the other mother, but what exactly makes her so terrifying? She's not your typical monster. She doesn't scream, she doesn't lunge at you from the dark, she doesn't attack out of nowhere. What does she do? She waits, she watches, she studies, she gives you everything you've ever wanted until you're too trapped to escape. And that is so much scarier. The way the other mother changes throughout the film is absolutely brilliant. At first, she just seems like a better version of Coraline's real mom. More attentive, more fun, more colorful, but little by little, subtle clues begin to show up. She stops smiling whenever Coraline questions something. Her eyes start to lose their sparkle, her fingers grow longer and thinner, and the food starts looking kind of weird. Then, when Coraline finally realizes the danger and refuses to sew buttons onto her eyes, the other mother's true face is revealed. A skeletal, monstrous creature with needle-like fingers and a smile that absolutely shouldn't be there. And the worst part? She doesn't just want to trap Coraline, she wants Coraline to choose to stay. That, my friend, is manipulation at its most terrifying. Now, let's talk about the cherry on top. The stop-motion animation. If Coraline had been made with traditional digital animation, it probably wouldn't have hit the same way. But stop-motion gives it this almost surreal effect. Everything looks real, but just off enough to feel unsettling. And that's where the discomfort kicks in. Every detail was carefully planned to heighten that eerie feeling. The use of color is genius. Coraline's real world is washed in cold, muted tones, while the other world starts off vibrant and full of life until it slowly becomes distorted and macabre as the illusion begins to crumble. The character design tells the story without needing much dialogue. Coraline's parents in the real world look drained and indifferent, while in the other world, they're lively and picture perfect, until they aren't. And those subtle movements are deeply disturbing. The way the other mother tilts her head, how the mice move in jerky, unnatural ways, how the set itself almost seems to breathe in some scenes. It all adds to the nightmare vibe. The result? Stop motion turns Coraline into a one-of-a-kind, unforgettable experience. Coraline isn't just a scary story. At its core, it's a tale about dissatisfaction, growing up, and courage. Coraline feels ignored by her parents, and when she discovers a world where everything seems perfect, of course she's drawn to it. But just like in real life, the things that seem too good to be true almost always are. The movie is packed with brilliant metaphors. The well near the house represents an ever-present danger, a bottomless pit, just like the other mother. The doll spying on Coraline symbolizes how the villain watches and studies her victims before making a move. The ghost children serve as a chilling reminder of what happens to those who fell into the trap before her. And all of this is told subtly. No need for long, explanatory dialogue. Very few kids' movies dare to truly scare their audience. But Coraline doesn't just go there, it delivers a kind of fear that grows with you. As kids, we're terrified by the button eyes. As adults, we grasp the deeper message, a story about manipulation, choices, and the danger of things that seem too perfect. The dark aesthetic, the haunting animation, and that unforgettable villain turn this film into a delicious nightmare that never quite leaves you. You might forget a few scenes, but that uneasy feeling, that whisper calling your name from the shadows, that stays with you. And maybe that's what makes Coraline a true classic. It doesn't just give you a quick scare, it leaves you with lingering doubt, a chill down your spine, and the urge to look back, just to make sure no one's watching you from the other side of the screen. So now tell me, would you dare to accept the buttons?